We're about to show you the top 7 pickleball strategies that will take down 95% of players.
And to make it even more accessible, we're going to break it down by level so you can focus on the strategy that will improve your game the most.
And if you like our content, please go ahead and subscribe. It helps us out more than you think. And let's get straight into it. We're starting off in the easy category, and we've got probably our simplest strategy on the list, but that doesn't mean it's not one of the most effective. Here's what we're gonna do. On the first couple points of your pickleball game, you need to be testing your opponents and seeing what they're capable of. So for the first, we recommend 2 to 3 points. I want you to try some fastballs, hit some hard serves, go for a little bit extra pace, especially from the baseline. Try a couple drives and test your opponent's ability to react to speed and see if they can deflect the ball back at you. This is a great way to find out what your opponents are capable of and if they're going to be able to react to the kind of pace that you're able to generate. Another big advantage to this strategy is it puts you in a great headspace at the start of the match because you get to play free. You're not going to be as tense as you usually would be because you know that you have full permission to swing hard and play confident because you're testing your opponents to see what they're made of. I like this. It helps me kind of relax before the match because I already know what my game plan is going straight into it. Now let's break down in a bit more detail a couple areas you can utilize this strategy. My first major area I like to try a speed up is when you get the chance to move up towards the kitchen. This is probably the most obvious speed up in pickleball because your goal is to hit your opponent's chest. I like to, if I'm able, find a player who seems like they might be the weaker of the two and try them first. Because if you can find a weak spot early on, you can take advantage of that for the rest of the match. Another key area, if you're consistent enough with it, is to try some powerful serves. A solid serve can set up a weak return, and that's a recipe for success that you want to follow throughout the entire match. So without totally missing your serve, we recommend adding a little bit extra pace early on to see what they're made of. And finally, of course, if you get that third shot drive, that's one of the best times to use it and see if your opponent can handle the pace. Because best case, they make an error immediately after you drive the ball. Second best case, they pop it up for you to put it away. Or third best case, they don't react any differently than how you hit a drop, meaning it's a safe option to choose for the rest of the match. We really like testing all of these areas in pickleball, especially at the beginning. So I recommend you try them out, especially at the beginning of the match to play free.
Our next strategy is what we call the turtle. So in pickleball, there are a lot of teams that solely rely on power. We call these people bangers. And their main goal is to hit the ball as hard as they can all the time. Now us, knowing that, we're going to get them very frustrated by playing a very soft game, hence the turtle strategy. So our goal here is to play as soft as possible and let them be the ones to initiate and make mistakes. So when you're back here hitting returns, you can hit your returns high and lofty. When you're hitting serves, you can hit your serves high and lofty. Third shots, you don't drive them, you drop them. And then when you finally make it up here to the kitchen, be very, very selective about the type of ball that you choose to speed up. Instead, you want to be hitting balls that your opponents can speed up, looking to counter them. Just by human nature, it's incredibly frustrating when you can't do the thing that you want to be doing. So as a team that wants to be speeding up the ball and playing a very fast game, if you can force them into a more dinking focused game, they will get frustrated and start making mistakes. They'll hit balls long, they'll speed up balls they shouldn't be speeding up and that you can easily counter, and they'll get overzealous and just hit balls into the net. All of these leading to your point because you're playing safe. Just a couple of quick tips before we move on from this. In these dinking rallies, specifically when you're up here at the kitchen, as the turtling team, you want to be hitting dinks that land in the first half of the kitchen if you can. So we're not really trying to push too many dinks here. We're just setting up short, easy balls right over the net that are A, unattackable. It's very difficult to attack a ball that's below the net. And B, if you do leave it a little bit too far and they do attack it, well, we're going to be ready to counter. Knowing that our opponents are what we call bangers, they're going to speed the ball up at us often. The second that we hit any of these dinks, get your paddle up around your chest ready, shade towards your backhand side, and look for the counters. Because they're adding so much pace, you really don't have to do much pace adding yourself. If you just focus on making good contact back at them, that ball will be going extremely fast back to them and you'll win a point just by simply hitting a good counter. A banger's worst nightmare is a long defensive game. And now that we have some of the fundamentals covered, let's move on to the intermediate strategies.
All right, as Shay said, we're moving on to the intermediate section. So this is a little bit more complicated than the easy strategies we just showed, but for our intermediate players, you should still be able to execute these with no problem. We've got a really fun one to start us out. So let's get right into it. Up first, we've got the no man's land trap. Yeah, kind of a mouthful, but trust me, it's super cool. We all know in pickleball that the most comfortable places on the court are either at the baseline or at the kitchen, because a lot of people like to call this zone in the middle no man's land. Most balls that come here are awkward, and you're most often at a defensive disadvantage when you're in this area because your opponents are likely at the kitchen attacking your feet. That's why we call this area of the court no man's land, because you don't want to hang out here longer than you have to. But there's actually a really cool way we can bait our opponents to stay in no man's land and potentially give us an advantage on the court. Let me explain how to do that. Here's the scenario. Your opponents are serving, you are returning. What I want you to do after you work your way up to the kitchen, I want you to hit a high ball to your opponents while they're working through the mid-court. Let me show you kind of what I mean from the opponent's perspective. Your opponents have just received a return, and they are likely either going to hit a third shot drive or a third shot drop. As they're working their way through the mid-court to eventually establish themselves at the kitchen, we want to give them a reason to stay here rather than work their way all the way up. And here's how we do that. Okay, now back to our team. When our opponents are in that spot that I just showed you and we're at the kitchen line, we're going to feed them a higher ball that's tempting that we wouldn't normally hit. So the reason we do this is because we want our opponents to start a hands battle from the midcourt. They think they've got an advantage because we hit a pop-up from the kitchen line, but we were doing that on purpose because the team that's already at the kitchen line has a huge advantage offensively playing against a team who's stuck in no man's land. Let me explain exactly why that works the way it does. When you're trying to speed up a ball from no man's land, your margin of error is really small, because from this position, you have less court to work with. And on top of that, you're most likely going to pop the ball back up to your opponents on the other side. So this is a dangerous area. And when your opponent volleys, it's very easy for them to target your feet in these areas. That makes it extremely difficult to win a hands battle from this position. That's why we want our opponents stuck here, trying to win a point from a place that they shouldn't be working from. So try this out in a couple of matches. When you catch your opponents working their way through no man's land, feed them up a ball that's a little bit too high and bait them into attacking you from that space. You'll be surprised how much advantage you have from that situation, and they'll be confused thinking they got an opportunity that turned into a mistake on their end. It's really fun. We love this strategy. Try it out.
Our next intermediate strategy is what we call fire and ice. This is like a good cop, bad cop situation, or in baseball, throwing a fastball, then a changeup. Before the match even starts, you're going to dedicate one player as the fire player or the aggressor, and one player as the ice player or the person playing more defensive. And there's a few different ways where you can implement this we'll talk about in a minute. But first, why this is so difficult for your opponents is because seeing contrast on the court makes it hard to respond to different types of balls. For example, if I'm returning a ball and they're constantly hitting an aggressive serve at me, maybe the first couple of times it's difficult, but as I see more and more reps, I get more accustomed to it and I can return it better. But if instead of them just hitting aggressive serves at me, they mix it up and hit an aggressive serve and then a soft serve, well then it's really hard for me to get into a groove, which makes my job a lot harder and my opponent's job a lot easier. So now thinking that we are the team that is doing the fire and ice strategy, in the beginning of the game, one person will be the server, they'll be the ice player. All right, I'm gonna be ice, you're gonna be fire, okay? Or else he's fire, I'm ice. Okay. So to start the game, you could just hit a really high, lofty serve, super gentle. Now your opponents are receiving this, they usually will just poke the ball right back at you. And now this is where it's your partner's turn as the fire player to come in, crash, and hit a offensive drive. So you just showed contrast immediately. The first player hit a soft serve, the second player hit a very hard drive. And that same thing applies as you move up to the midcourt. From here, the ice player would be hitting defensive resets, trying to move up. The fire player will be hitting offensive shots, trying to speed up from here and make your opponents make a mistake. And then up here at the kitchen, the same thing applies. When you're in a dink rally, the ice player will be hitting soft shots, soft dinks, resetting balls, while the fire player is hitting aggressive roll dinks, aggressive shots, pushing back your opponent, and then speeding up different types of balls. This can be very unsettling for your opponents because if they hit a dink to me and I gently push it back, well, they might be thinking that that dink is not a safe dink. So when they hit that same exact type of dink to my partner, and he speeds it up, well, that's very confusing for them and it puts them on edge, and they don't have a good way to know what's coming next from us as a team. Now, the way you can make this even more advanced is to halfway through the match, switch roles. So if you're both capable of doing a fire and ice strategy, if I can be offensive and defensive and my partner can do the same, then halfway through the match, we just switch roles, and now it becomes even more confusing for our opponents. This really is one of the best strategies you can implement, but it's not only limited to doubles. You can also do this in singles. In singles specifically, with your third shot, you can just go into a pattern where every other third shot you hit a drive, and the shots in between you hit drops. So I'm serving, they return. My very first third shot, I'll hit a drive. The next time I get an opportunity to serve, I'll be hitting a drop, and then a drive, and then a drop. And this sort of contrast is a great way to mess with your opponent so they have no clue what's coming next. And now that we've gone through the intermediate strategies, it's time to level up and talk about the advanced strategies.
All right, that wraps up our intermediate strategies, and now it's time for 3 advanced strategies that are some of the most complicated, but also the most fun to execute during your points. These can win you a ton of matches. We highly recommend you try them out, even if it feels a little bit above your pay grade to start. Let me show you the first one. The first strategy we have for you in this category is called debate. This is one of the most satisfying plans to execute during a match because it works more often than you expect. The key with this strategy is we want to bait our opponents into attacking a space that they think is open, but in reality, we've set them up to attack that area on purpose. That may seem a little bit complicated, but don't worry, it pans out pretty easily. We've got 2 of the most common scenarios that we're gonna show you where you can bait your opponents into giving you a free put away. The first, and probably most common, is called the partner back scenario. It works like this. After your opponents serve the ball and you are the returner here at the baseline, I want you to return the ball, but be too slow working your way up to the kitchen. This feels counterintuitive, but trust me, here's why. So you return the ball, but you make it seem like there's space in front of you that your opponent should drive the ball at your feet because you're caught in no man's land. The catch is our partner is in on the trick, and they're going to poach the drive that our opponents hit cross court. As you can see, our opponents drive the ball at what they think is open space on the court, but our partner crosses over, poaches, and sets up the point for success. You'll encounter this a lot in pickleball, and you don't even always have to plan it before you execute it. If you see your partner coming up late to the kitchen line, be active on the other side of the court and anticipate your opponents making what they think is a smart decision and capitalize on your prediction. It's pretty simple to execute and throws your opponents very off guard. Just careful not to overdo it because they will likely catch on eventually and change up their game plan. Now, let me show you the second scenario you can bait your opponents into doing the exact same thing. Let's say this time you're the serving team instead of the returning team. This is slightly more advanced, but pretty much accomplishes the same concept we just applied. So we serve the ball, our opponents return, ideally somewhere in midcourt, and we hit a third shot drop. The catch is instead of capitalizing on the third shot drop and moving all the way up to the kitchen, one partner is going to again stand a little bit too far back in no man's land and tempt our opponents into attacking this space at our feet. The catch is that our other partner is going to recognize that that's the game plan and poach the ball and set up the point again for success. As you can see, we hit a third shot drop. It's a little bit too high. We stay a little bit too far back, but our partner recognizes it, closes the space, and wins the point offensively. It's incredibly fun to execute. Again, we don't suggest you overuse this because your opponent should adapt if they're smart, but it's a great way to capitalize on predicting your opponent's next move. Try it out in some matches and have some fun.
Our next advanced strategy is what we call the angle factory, and this mainly happens up at the kitchen line. So you and your partner, your entire goal is to hit sharp angles to one side of the court. So for this example, I will be hitting sharp cross-court angle dinks that direction. Now, the point of this is that if I keep hitting dinks over there, my partner has the liberty to move towards the sideline, maybe even go for an Ernie. And now all of a sudden we have one person applying pressure right here and me applying pressure hitting dinks cross-court heavy over here. It's essentially creating a 2v1 situation to the person that's on this side of the court. Now, there's a couple of things to keep in mind here. Number one, you want to be hitting shots at your opponent's feet if you can. So we're looking for shots that land in the back half of the kitchen. This is for 2 reasons. Number one, it's going to force your opponent to take some of those balls out of the air. And it's harder to control a ball out of the air than it is on the bounce because balls out of the air have more pace because they haven't hit the court yet and lost some of their pace because of friction to the court. So when they're taking balls out of the air, they might pop it up a little bit. And our hope is that when we're hitting these cross-court dinks, the partner of our opponent is not covering the middle very well. They're kind of staying towards the side of the court. So if I'm hitting a heavy roll cross-court dink to my opponent's feet, they pop it up slightly, I now can just step over and hit a roll down the middle in this gap that's opened up because their partner's not covering well. The other reason that you want to be hitting shots towards the back half of the kitchen is because if you hit any sort of heavy topspin roll to the front half of the kitchen, then that's going to set your opponents up for an easy ATP. So if a ball were to land in the back half of the kitchen and then move out, there's not a lot of room to hit an ATP. But if you were up closer to the net, you can see more of the court becomes available. So the closer I hit my ball to the front half of the kitchen and it goes outside of this net, the more court becomes available for an ATP. So that's the second reason why we want to be aiming our roll dinks towards the back half of the kitchen. Now, of course, the other attacking option here is because I'm putting so much pressure on this person, my partner, like I said, has the liberty to walk around this line and start looking for Ernies. And so now we have my partner standing right here looking for an Ernie opportunity and me covering the middle, which means that the only really safe option this person has is to hit a very aggressive cross-court dink back across the court, which if I'm, first of all, hitting a very aggressive dink to them, it's very, very difficult for them to now hit an aggressive dink cross-court back to me. It's going to lead to a lot of mistakes on their end. The angle factory is a great way to put a lot of pressure on one person. Typically, you'd want to do this to the opponent that seems to have the most defensive dinks. So if they're not very good at generating pace themselves, you want to be pushing balls to them, hoping that they stay defensive, and then just hit one a little bit too high that you and your partner can speed up and then win the point.
Before we move on to the last strategy, I've got a bonus one for you. Many of the techniques and strategies we're showing you rely on creating power and heavy spin, and I'd be lying to say that your paddle doesn't play a big role in helping make that happen. That's why I'm recommending the Banger paddle from our friends at Enhance who sponsored this video. It's got a bigger sweet spot than most paddles on the market. It's got the maximum grit allowed, so you know you're getting maximum spin. Plus, it's literally called the Banger paddle, so you know you're getting a lot of power on top of those extra huge features. One of my favorite bonuses is that it's edgeless, so I'm much less likely to make mishits off of my edge guard. And I even like that it has these little markers on the edge that show me where I can put weight strips to customize the paddle to my preferences. So if you're looking for a paddle upgrade, now is the best time to check out the Banger paddle. They've got a special Mother's Day sale happening right now, so it's only $99.99, which is the lowest price it's ever been. Plus, when you use our code CRACKED, you get another $20 off that price. After Mother's Day, the price will go up slightly, but our code is still valid. Check out our link below in the description if you're interested, and let's move on to the final strategy to finish off our list.
Our last advanced strategy is the Ernie Bird gets the worm. This is something that you want to do at the beginning of a match. That's why we played on the words here. The early bird gets the worm, the Ernie Bird gets the worm. The earlier you can do this in the match, it shows your opponents that you are willing to go for Ernies. And something that's really cool about an Ernie is that if you're capable of doing it, it completely prevents your opponents from hitting down the line safe dinks. Now, a lot of the times when someone hits a very aggressive dink to me on the sideline, the easiest shot for me to make is a very soft shot down the line. But if I know that my opponents are looking for an Ernie, then that shot, I can't hit it anymore. So I'm forced to hit a harder, more difficult shot for me to accomplish, something like another cross-court shot or maybe resetting towards the middle. So if you're a really smart player and you're more advanced at the beginning of a game, go for an Ernie early. But the trick here is that your partner needs to be on the same page as you. You both need to know that you're going to go for that early Ernie, because if I go for this early Ernie and my partner's on the same page and they stay on that side of the court, well, then the middle is entirely open and we just lose a point instantly because we're not communicating well. So usually this only makes sense if you're targeting one player specifically. So before the point starts, we're going to say, we're going to be dinking to this person over here. And now I know that we're going to dink to that person. The first dink I see to this side of the court, I'm going for the Ernie and my partner's going to cover the middle. Now, an even more advanced way to do this is to go for the Ernie early, meaning that before my partner even hits the dink to that player, I'm already moving here looking for an Ernie. So what this does is put a tremendous amount of pressure and thoughts into this person's head. If I'm already positioning myself right here as they're receiving a shot, well, they know that this area is off limits, and so they're going to be hitting a shot that they're probably not comfortable with. But the important thing is they have to be thinking about all that while executing their shot early in a match when they're probably nervous. So this is a great strategy to employ. The one thing you really do need to be mindful of, though, if you're going for this early Ernie, is that if you step out here early and your opponent recognizes it, the easiest thing for them to do is just hit you with the ball. So make sure you're ready to move out of the way or receive a ball coming at your face. Because if you're putting yourself in this position, you're putting yourself in a position to be hit by the ball. So just be careful out there.
You just learned the top 7 pickleball strategies that will take down almost anyone on the pickleball court.
If you found this video helpful, make sure you subscribe, and YouTube really thinks you're gonna like this video next. We think you should click on it.
I just hit it with a ball, I think.